Hi everybody, you are now in the lucrative business of selling donuts, and you sell donuts for $4 a dozen while you hire workers for $10 an hour. So the question is, how many workers should you hire? If you take a look at a chart like this, which is what you would likely be given, you can see the number of workers and the total product, the total number of dozen donuts these workers can put out. You'll notice that the workers begin increasing efficiency and number of donuts very quickly, and then those gains by each additional worker drops off. And that's what we care about, not the total number being put out, but the gain that we get from each worker. That is known as marginal product or marginal revenue product. So, well, first you get marginal product by taking the difference between the first worker and the next worker. So from worker 1 to worker 2, we have a difference of 20. From worker 2 to worker 3, a difference of 15, 10, 5, and 2. And then our marginal revenue product is the value of what they're making. So here, to get from marginal product to marginal revenue product, I'll have to multiply by 4, which is the price of each dozen donuts. So here I have 60, 80, 60 again, 40, 20, and 8. So you can see the different values that I have for my marginal revenue product. Marginal cost for my worker, if I'm in a perfectly competitive industry, which this doesn't say, but we can assume that in this case, and we can assume it mostly because I'm telling you that, is $10 per hour. So my marginal cost for each worker is $10. Each time I add a worker, it's adding $10 to my cost. And I want to produce where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. And if marginal cost exceeds marginal revenue, I'm going to drop back. So the question is, how many workers should I hire? Take a look at where my marginal cost and marginal revenue line up. You want to look past where it peaks. So if you had a situation here in the early times where marginal cost was below marginal revenue, but then marginal revenue exceeds or was above marginal revenue, but then marginal revenue exceeds marginal cost, you should keep going. And you keep going here until you get to the 6th worker where marginal revenue is less than marginal cost. So you drop back and you should hire 5 workers. Now, let's take a look at what this market situation is telling us. That means that the marginal cost of a worker is the market price for that worker. So in a perfectly competitive firm, they would be looking at the market supply of labor, the number of laborers willing to work at any given price, and the marginal revenue product or demand for labor, how much we can afford to hire at any given output. But in perfectly competitive firm, I can get as many laborers as I want at the market price. So let's say the market price was $5 an hour. I can hire an infinite number of workers to work for me at $5 an hour, so I'd never pay more than that. You see this a lot in low-pay, unskilled jobs where they're perfectly competitive for labor. Places like a Burger King or a McDonald's that pay minimum wage are very close to it for the vast majority of their resources. So this is what a factor market would look like. If you, however, are in the annoying AP thought exercise of being in a monopsony, you would have a different situation. A monopsony is where you're the only gig in town. So your supply of labor is here, but your marginal revenue product is here. But you have to look at that factor cost, in this case labor, so your marginal cost of labor or wage. If you want to hire more workers, you have to pay them more. So your cost increases and breaks away from your supply of labor because you can't price discriminate for laborers. So in a monopsony, your marginal factor cost actually splits away from your laborers, and you still hire where MC equals MR, but you can drop down and pay a little bit lower for these workers because you're the only game in town. So you would drop down here and you would pay these workers less than what a market price would be in a perfectly competitive industry. So you come out here and have a much lower hourly wage. This gap right here would represent minimizing your losses, or cutting costs for your industry. And this, of course, would represent a deadweight loss to society because of your exploitative labor practices. So think of a coal mine town or another town where they only have one business. This would be monopsony. This is not something that's realistic in real life, but it is popular on the AP exam because it's a valuable thought exercise. Hope again that this helped.